apologize.
No sweat.
That's okay, Jane. Wayne Maycheck?
How fast are these trees gonna grow? I mean, you're putting, no, I'm serious. This
Probably depends on the season.
well, no, but I mean,
sometimes-
if you
yeah,
have
yeah.
you originally gonna plant an 8-foot tree,
Right, right.
And is it gonna grow to 10 feet and then that's it?
No, I don't know the answer to that, so.
Okay,
I mean,
I think that's a question that.
We can get those details as
Google
part of
it.
the land development plan, you know, and make sure that we
Was a cedar
achieve
one?
a buffer, full vegetative buffer over a certain year.
Right.
That's what they usually do. Ordinances will say, plant a buffer over a certain year, it needs to be this high. Yeah.
Okay. The other question I have is, there's a good chance that some of these trees not making it. All
We're
right?
gonna try to
But-
make them as much deer-resistant trees as
Well,
possible.
Yes, but who's gonna maintain that?
They will be, the SRE is gonna be required to maintain that.
Okay, so there'll be like maybe a semi-annual review, take a look at the trees, see which
Yeah.
ones are crapping out and, you know.
Yes,
that
sir.
sort of-
Yes, sir.
And then I understand that, it's gonna be getting back to the sheep thing. Now, sheep like to graze, I guess they take their grass right down real low. Okay, is that gonna cause an erosion issue?
Well, they would have to probably try to keep them in certain areas, try to move them around so
Okay,
that they
so-
didn't bring that grass down that
So,
road.
so the person responsible for that would have to make sure that,
They,
the
they
rotation
move them
around.
around, yes, correct.
That's all I have, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's it from the planning commission. Waymart Borough Council, do any council members have any questions?
How would you get the wires across that ditch?
Mr. Miller?
Did you take digs, okay, bore under? And you mentioned arborvitae's, I don't know, deer love arborvitae's, so I don't think you want them.
There's certain types of junipers and stuff that are deer resistance that we would put in there. Yes.
Okay, with that, any redirect, Attorney Miller?
I don't believe I have anything else. I have anything else at this time.
No redirect, all right, we would ask you to call your next witness, and for everybody, the interveners, planning, and borough council, just wanna remind everybody, Mr. Brigette is, that was expert testimony. Planning commission and borough council is free to accept or reject any expert testimony, especially if they feel that any of his opinions are beyond the scope of his expertise. He's a surveyor, okay? Just keep that in mind with all the experts that you listen to. With that, Mr. Miller, your next witness, please.
I'd like to call Jennifer Brunty,
Can you spell Brunty for us?
Brunty.
Thank you. Jennifer, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Can we switch the screen so we see Jennifer bigger? Jennifer, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, with the witness being sworn, it's your witness, Attorney Miller.
Okay.
And if you could please speak up, because our court reporter couldn't make it, so we're tape recording this, okay?
Okay.
Good evening, Ms. Brunty. Could you please state for the record who your employer is or who you're employed by?
I'm employed by Stantec Consulting Services.
Spell that.
Can you spell that, please?
STANEC. STANEC.
Stanek?
It's STANTEC.
NEC.
Stantec, what's the next one?
It's all one word.
I know Stantec, but what's the next
Oh,
one?
what's after Stantec?
Stantec Consulting Services,
Thank you.
Inc.
And Ms. Brunty, could you describe what Stantec does, what type of company it is?
It's a global consulting firm, engineering primarily, but we have specialists of just about anything you can imagine. I'm in environmental services.
And where are you located, Ms. Brunty?
I'm located in Sarasota, Florida.
And what is your role and your position at Stantec?
I'm a senior environmental scientist, a wetland scientist.
And you were hired for this project to prepare a glare analysis, correct?
Yes.
What is your experience in performing glare analysis at Stantec?
I started doing them about 7 years ago now, and I've done over 140 of them. I started because I was working on a project where we needed an analysis and nobody was available. So I learned how to do it myself, and I've been doing them ever since for the last 7 years.
I neglected to ask you earlier, but what is your educational background?
I have a PhD in soil science. My degrees are in agriculture. I've changed jobs or changed careers quite a few times.
And have you prepared glare studies? I think you said over 140 glare studies, is that correct?
Yes, approximately.
And have you prepared those glare studies for solar projects specifically?
Yes.
Can you give just a sampling of what areas of the country you've prepared studies in?
I've done all over the United States, east, west, north, south. I've done a couple in Canada, a couple in Australia. My biggest concentration has been in the eastern US, but I've done some very large projects out in the west, California, Arizona, Colorado.
And you have done some glare studies for projects in Pennsylvania in the past?
Yes, I've done quite a few in Pennsylvania in the past few months.
Okay. And have you ever testified in any zoning hearings or conditional use hearings before?
Yes.
Were you offered as an expert in those proceedings?
Yes.
And offered as an expert in glare analysis in those proceedings?
Yes.
And have you ever been rejected in any of those proceedings as an expert?
No.
I'd like to offer Ms. Brunty as an expert in solar glare analysis.
Any interveners want to fordeer the proposed expert? The answer is no. Anybody from the planning commission?
Yes.
John Matosky has questions.
So you are a self-taught glare expert, correct?
Yes.
That's it.
Any questions from Borough Council? Were there questions for Borough Council? Okay.
Is she accepted as?
There's no objections to it.
Thank you. Ms. Brunty, are you familiar with the Belmont Turnpike Solar Project?
Yes.
And have you reviewed the conditional use application submitted for this project?
Yes.
And have you reviewed the project site plans that we've talked about and discussed earlier this evening as Exhibit C to the project?
Yes.
Can you describe your methodology for preparing glare hazard analysis reports? What software you use?
The software I use is called Forge Solar, and this software is based on technology developed by Sandia National Labs, which originally developed a solar glare hazard analysis tool to determine if airplanes were going to see glare and air traffic control towers if they would see glare. This was done with the National Lab in conjunction with a man named Keenan Sims. Sandia National Labs, but at some point, due to cybersecurity concerns, they cut off public access to that software. So Keenan Sims, who was one of the original developers of the software, has a company called Forge Solar, and that's where that comes from. What I do when I do a glare analysis, I have a list of questions that I ask to have answered, and then I get the polygons showing where the array is going to be, and I draw up the polygons in the program and enter the data from my questionnaire list and get the results.
And you had indicated earlier that you were originally self-trained in using this software. Have you worked with peers and other professionals with the software and glare analysis since you originally learned it?
Yes, I've worked with Keenan Sims. He's very responsive, and I ask him questions all the time.
And again, that's the actual creator of or the owner of the Forge Solar software.
Yes, yes.
And could you describe the Forge Solar software? How is that viewed within the professional industry or design industry for solar projects?
It's the industry standard. I have seen only a couple of people who didn't use it. They tried to hand calculate the information, but otherwise, I've been hired to review other people's work in Forge Solar or in glare analysis, and I really haven't seen. I've seen probably 2 or 3 times over the years where somebody didn't use Forge Solar. There's another program put out by a Dutch company in the Netherlands that I've seen the demo for, but I've never heard of anybody who's used it.
And Forge Solar has been used by the Federal Aviation Administration to do glare analysis of airports.
They, the FAA doesn't actually do any glare analysis, but there's a report in the program that can be printed to satisfy FAA concerns.
So, in other words, FAA accepts the results of the Forge Solar analysis or recognizes the validity of them.
Could you tell us who
Yes.
the FAA is?
The Federal Aviation Administration.
Thank you.
The U.S. military has also likewise recognized Forge Solar as a valid program for glare analysis, correct?
Yes, I've done a couple of military projects over the years.
You're in, when you do a glare analysis, what are you analyzing? What is glare?
We're looking at using heights of panels and angles of panels and heights of sensitive receptors, viewers from houses or roads, airplanes, air traffic control towers.
And what?
And
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
no, go ahead.
What type of glare can be experienced from photovoltaic panels or solar panels?
There's 2 types of glare. The program that categorizes them as green glare and yellow glare. Yellow glare is something that would leave a temporary after image. If you looked at it and looked away, you would see it like on your eyelids for a second or 2. And green glare is just kind of there. noticeable but not bothersome.
The glare though, and the source of the glare, when we talk about solar panels though, is that an indirect or a direct type of glare?
It's an indirect type of glare.
And what is the difference between direct and indirect glare?
Direct glare would be doing something like looking directly at the sun or at a bright light. Indirect glare is when that sunlight or bright light bounces off of something before you see it.
And is there also sky reflected glare?
Yes, sky reflected glare would occur at night when light from a lamp or a fire or something was lighting up the night and was being reflected off the evening haze.
And in your review of the Waymart Borough zoning ordinance, were there any provisions regarding reflective indirect glare?
Yes, the zoning language, if I recall correctly, was related to direct glare and to sky reflected glare.
And indirect glare was not included in that. It was referring to sources, direct sources of light, floodlights, combustion processes, things like that, correct?
Yes,
You did prepare a glare hazard analysis for this evening, is that correct?
yes,
And we have that as Exhibit H in your exhibit packets. I would just ask you, if you could, Ms. Brunty, if you could just briefly review your inputs for this analysis, and particularly the screening that you used in the analysis, and then just review your results of the study with the council and the public here this evening. And feel free, if you can share your screen to use the study, feel free, or we can share it if you prefer to do that.
let me share. So, do they have the original glare study or do they have the revised one?
They have the revised one that we submitted this evening, and maybe you could start, I should have asked you that question first. What revisions were made for this evening for the report following our meeting with the Planning Commission and Borough Council, when there were some comments and suggestions from them?
Some additional screening on the west side of the array next to Belmont Turnpike was added.
Okay, and do you have, I think if you could scroll down just a little bit, I think your exhibit shows the screening that you used, or the other direction. There we go. So could you just identify the screening that you used in the analysis?
This is the new tree screening here. And here, this was some of the original screening, planned trees over here. And then, of course, I used some existing trees. The orange line is an obstruction feature. So the program looks at that as a wall at a given height that you enter. And these, the planned trees I entered as 10 feet, as they said earlier.
Okay. Could you then just walk through the analysis from there and the results that, that your analysis showed?
Yes, so the analysis showed, let's see, that there would be a small amount of glare on Wayman Drive.
And can you specify what type?
It was green glare. All of the results with this updated analysis resulted in green glare. There was no more yellow glare.
And could you describe for everybody what the just so we're clear on this, because it's an important point, what the difference is between green and yellow glare?
Yeah, yellow glare is something that's much more likely to cause a temporary after image, and green glare is something that you notice, but it's not especially bothersome.
And is
The FAA has likened both of them to natural reflections that you would get off of a lake, a body of water, a glass building, parking lots, things like that.
so, and there is a third category of glare as well, correct?
There's red glare, but you would never see it on these kind of solar farms. You would see that on one of those concentrated arrays they have out west, where there's a tall tower in the middle of a big circle of panels that all concentrate their glare on that. There is no red glare in this type of system.
Okay,
And red
just
glare is permanent eye damage.
and just for clarification, those panels and those systems are mirror panels. They're mirrors. They're not actually light absorbing panels.
Right.
And that's an entirely different. This has nothing close to.
Yeah. I can't do a model for that. This program does not. Ford Solar doesn't cover that. I don't know if anything does.
So if you could just continue with what the results are on this project.
So there's a little bit of glare on Wayman Drive down here. About 1,300 minutes per year, but it's and about 23 minutes per day at the maximum early in the morning between May and July. Not very much, and it is just green glare. I will say the FAA has said that both green and yellow glare is okay for pilots to see, so I kind of think if it's okay for pilots, it's probably okay for drivers too. Because the FAA, like I said, is likened the glare to natural sources.
And you mentioned that glare is early in the morning as well.
Yes.
Would that coincide with sunrise as well?
Yes, the glare is occurring in the morning because the sun is low in the sky and it's bouncing off the array at a very low angle. It bounces off the array at the angle that it comes in at, and so it bounces off at a low angle, so low-lying features on the other side can see it. So even though, they see the glare and they also see the sun behind the glare. So I don't know that the glare coming off the panels adds a lot to the natural glare of the sun.
Okay.
This house here had the most glare at 1,695 minutes per year, and up to 13 minutes per day in the early morning, April through September. Again, that's green glare. That's like the worst case scenario of anything. There's 3 other houses that had glare that were like 2 to 4 minutes per day in the early mornings in March and September. And there's one helipad where glare can be seen. And the helipads, I model them with the helicopter hovering 500 feet above the helipad because I have no idea where a helicopter is going to go. So with that, there is up to 27 minutes per day of glare if a helicopter happened to be hovering in that spot at the exact time that the glare was occurring in the late evening. And that's it for the glare that I found.
And again, I think you stated earlier, but does the FAA consider that level of green glare for a helicopter hovering? Is that any danger at all to a pilot or any impact at all?
No, they don't think that. They've done studies and they put out a technical report, and it said that green and yellow glare is not an issue for pilots. They just don't want air traffic control towers to be seeing any glare.
Is anybody here a pilot? Sorry, go ahead.
So were there any other locations that were identified with any kind of glare impact?
No, just the 4 houses, the Wayman Drive and the helicopter pad, and they were all green glare.
In your opinion, then, and from doing these studies elsewhere and on other projects, is there any adverse impact on those properties by experiencing this kind of green glare?
Green glare is not really some people will complain about anything, but green glare is not typically something that you would find bothersome or blinding. So, in my opinion, I don't think it's significant glare.
And if you could just state again, in the locations where there is glare occurring, is it occurring or coinciding with sunrise or sunset? In other words, other sources of a direct glare associated with it?
It's all occurring with sunrise except for the helicopter pad. So any of those houses that see glare or the road, they're seeing the sun behind the panels as well. The sun's probably more blinding than the panels.
Okay, and in your analysis then, there is no yellow glare in this report at this time, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the green glare, I believe you stated, in your opinion, in your professional opinion, is a minimal amount of glare for a project like this associated with early morning sunrise or sun. Is that correct?
Yes, this is very minimal glare, especially for a fixed tilt system.
And would you expect this to have any negative impact on any of the properties that will experience any of it?
No, I don't think so.
That's all that I have. Open up questions.
Okay. Interveners, Cheryl McDonough, any questions?
No questions.
Deb Galopani, any questions?
Sheila.
Okay. Alice Van Anen, any questions?
I just have one. In the original report at the meeting, you said there was 44 minutes of yellow glare along certain areas. Is that,
Could you please speak up? I'm sorry.
so in the original report, there was 44 minutes of yellow glare along various points. Is that gone now because of the screening?
Yes, that's,
Yes.
Okay.
and
So how
and
high would
that's-
the
and-
screening need to be to eliminate that?
Ms. Brunty, just to be clear, that's the addition of the screening along Belmont Turnpike, correct?
Yes.
And what height are you using as an assumption for that screening?
10 feet.
I have no other questions.
Thank you. Linda Drake still here? Linda, actually, I think we're gonna take you as a party, so if anything, we're gonna have your attorney is gonna ask you questions if he wants, okay? We're gonna take you out as an intervener since you're a party to the action on the other side. We can't have you on both sides, okay? All right. Joshua Miller.
Nothing.
Maria Miller. Eugene Hepger.
No.
Jay Spore.
Yes, I do have a question. I'm the house directly across the road. Do you have it marked there, I don't know, OP 13, can't quite tell from this distance. And you said I would have 1,695 minutes of glare per year, and 13 minutes of glare per day. Is that prior to adding the screening, or is that what I have after the screening was put in place?
That's with the screening.
And what time of day am I gonna have that 13 minutes?
Early in the morning, around sunrise.
And that would be throughout the entire year?
That would be April through September.
Okay. And I presume it probably goes without saying that when you put this, model this together, you use the elevation of my house as compared to the elevation of the array itself.
The Forge Solar program calculates, well, it uses the elevations from Google Earth. And I assume house heights, the viewing height from a house is 16 feet above ground level. And then the array is, let's see, I think these were 9 and 12. The array is a certain number of feet above ground level. And the ground level is dictated by Google Earth.
Can you tell me how many minutes of glare I had prior to you adding that screening?
I don't have that offhand. It wasn't that many more minutes, but there was a little bit of yellow glare.
Okay. And
Not a lot.
all yellow glare is completely eliminated with your screening, provided it stays at
Yes.
10 feet height in the exact location that it is on the map, because that field slopes down from my home.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's what the model says.
And Ms. Bronte, if I could just, in your model, you're also assuming, what kind of atmospheric conditions are you assuming?
It assumes that there's going to be 365 days of clear, sunny days.
So the model does not take into account any kind of cloud cover or any
No.
atmospheric conditions?
Can I ask one more
No.
question? It's for lack of a better question here. How often is your model correct?
It's been ground truth, and I personally once had an experience where I did an analysis. I told the client that they should not rest the panels at less than a certain angle during a certain month of the year, and they went and built the system and got a complaint with a picture of very bad glare, and they took the date and time off the digital picture, went back and looked at what angle they had the panels resting at, and they had it resting at 0 to 10 degrees, which is where I told them not to rest it. And that's glare also occurred during the month that the program predicted that there would be glare. It was that accurate. It's a model, so they're not perfect, but I've found them to be pretty accurate from what I've seen.
Can you say, a percentage of accuracy, be it 80%, 90%, 50%?
I can't say that. And I haven't read on the software webpage that they claim any percent accuracy, but they do go back and ground truth some of the analyses to make sure that things are coming out right, and they're improving the program all of the time. They upgrade. Since I've been doing this for 7 years, I've seen the program evolve a lot. So I think it's very accurate, but exactly how accurate, I don't know.
Thank you.
Models aren't perfect.
Thank you.
Planning Commission, any questions? Wayne Maycheck?
I have one question. It seems like your analysis was done based on the picture that's up on the screen there, is done in the summertime. Would, if the same analysis done in the wintertime, there's no leaves on the trees, does that change anything at all? You know what I mean?
Typically, the trees, in my experience, the trees that are planted for screening tend to be evergreens.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case here, but they tend to be.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because you have a yellow line drawn through that one section of woods that's does a reflection on Wayman Drive. And if you did that in the wintertime, would the reflection change at all? The model, does the model change the reflection, the glare at all? You know what I mean?
Do you mean this line here?
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Yeah, I put it in the middle of the trees. Even in this kind of an area, even if all the trees lose their leaves, there's still going to be so many branches left in the winter that this should still be a pretty good solid line.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody on Borough Council have any questions?
I just have one.
Shane Bailey?
Does your software take into consideration snow cover for
No.
glare? So does that play a role? Snow cover?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Does the snow cover in the winter time, does that have an effect on the glare?
Snow itself might reflect glare, but that's not something that's in the program.
Anything else, Shane?
No.
I have a few questions. Is there any potential for ocular impact in this project?
Ocular impact, not according to the model, and the temporary after image, even if there was yellow glare, I wouldn't call that ocular impact. The red glare is something that would be damaging to the eyes, and that doesn't happen with this type of solar system.
So is there any opportunity for any type of yellow glare in this project?
Modeled this way, no.
How about
but
modeled other ways? How about modeled anyway? Is there any chance of yellow glare going on any of the neighbors in this project?
Yeah, if we removed all of the obstructions, there's chance for yellow glare.
Okay. So why can't you have this project where there's no chance of even green glare?
That just fixed tilt panels, they they result in a lot of glare. Now this is hardly any glare compared to what I normally see with fixed tilt panels.
Well, we're not worried about what you usually see, we're worried about this project. You just said there's a lot of glare with fixed tilt panels, which are the panels going into this project. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, but before I even put the obstructions in, there wasn't as much glare as I normally would see with the fixed tilt project.
But didn't you just testify that there's a lot of glare with this project?
No, I'd say that there's very little glare with this project.
Okay. But there is yellow glare with the project. It's just screening is gonna block the yellow glare, right?
There was yellow glare predicted for this project without some of the screening, yes.
Okay. Why can't we block the green glare?
You could with enough screening, I suppose.
So that's the key with screening. As long as we have enough screening, there shouldn't be any glare for any of the neighbors. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know. Without modeling additional screening, I don't know.
So are you saying that there's a chance with all the screening in the world there would still be green glare to the neighbors?
I don't know.
So there's the possibility of glare.
Yes. Although I would call it minor, relatively insignificant glare if it's green glare.
So what's the scientific definition of minor and insignificant glare?
Something that isn't bothersome.
So the sun is up in the sky, right? And it's going to reflect off of these panels, correct?
Yes.
Do you know the percentage of the sun that's going to be reflected off of these panels?
There is a lot of data that I could download related to the results.
My question is, do you know what percentage of the sun is going to be reflected off of these panels?
No.
A reflection of the sun is basically redirecting the sun in a different direction. Would you agree with that statement?
I don't think I understand that statement.
Well, the sun, what these are doing, these are there to collect the sun, correct? That's where the energy is coming from, the sun, right?
Right.
So when the sun hits these panels have a reflection to them, is that correct?
Yes.
And that reflection is basically a redirection of the sun. Would you agree with that statement?
It's indirect glare, yes.
Okay. And you don't know what percentage of the sun is being redirected?
Well, there's specifications for the panels that could give some idea of absorption and reflection, but I don't know.
Certainly you reviewed that as part of your testimony for tonight, right?
And Ms. Bronte, you did use the panels that were specified for this project, V-Sun panels, with, or an assumption that there's an anti-reflective glare coating on the panels.
So to follow up with that, even if the anti-reflective panels, what is the percentage that's being reflected? You don't know, correct?
No.
You said that the glare with the new model that you've proposed today with the new screening, there's still going to be 4 homes on Wayman Drive that are going to get glare, correct?
I don't think they're on Wayman Drive. They're over to the west.
On Silver?
13, 18, 19, and 21.
Okay, and why can't you buffer that glare?
I could if I put in a bunch more screening.
Okay.
However, I can't add any more screening in the program as it is because I'm limited by the program to 10 obstructions. So I already used 10. I would have to figure something else out to add more screening, but
Could you show us with your cursor there which homes are gonna be impacted by glare?
13,
We can't really see those numbers on the screen.
13,
13 is there.
Okay, Jay, that's your house?
Yes, it is.
19, and 21.
Those homes are all gonna get glare.
They're predicted to receive, except for 13, they're predicted to receive up to 3 minutes per day of green glare in
Except
March
for,
and September.
except for which one?
13. 13 was predicted to see more.
And that's Mr. Sporer's home.
But the 3 over here, they're predicted to see 2 to 4 minutes per day.
Okay, across the street from 13, Mr. Sporer's home, there's a commercial building. So you're saying Mr. Sporer's home will get reflection, but the commercial building will not get any reflection?
I did not include the commercial building in the analysis.
Why not?
I thought it was an industrial building until just recently.
The whole side of that building facing those panels are all windows. As a matter of fact, there's a sunroom that is made up of all glass. Were you aware of that?
No.
Now, when there's a reflection off of these panels from the glare, is there heat?
The panels do get hotter than they, a little bit. As described earlier, the panels could get up to 110 degrees on a hot day.
Yes. So when the sun hits the panels, we know the panels will be 110 degrees, but there's a beam of light that's going to be reflected off of each panel. Where that beam of light hits, do you know what that temperature is going to be?
It's not going to be high.
Well, we don't know what that means. Do you know what temperature within a range?
No, I don't.
Well, then how do you know it wasn't going to be high?
I've spent a lot of time around solar farms, and I've never experienced a heat wave in passing any of them.
Is it your testimony that all of the glare in this project can be eliminated with proper screening?
I wouldn't know that without doing the analysis with a lot more screening.
And how long would it take you to do that analysis?
Well, because I don't have any, because I can't add any more obstructions because I've already used up the 10 that are allowed, I'm not sure how I would do that. So once I figured out how to do it, it wouldn't take very long at all.
So is it fair to say for your testimony tonight, your testimony is incomplete?
I don't think I would say that.
That's all I have. Does anybody else have any questions? Any redirect?
If I could just add one more.
Go ahead.
Shane Bailey again. So, in your professional opinion, in the winter time, would the snow increase or decrease the glare per day for those 4 or 5 homes?
I don't know anything about what snow would do. Snow would be separate from the panels. It would have its own reflectivity. And that's not something that's considered in the program.
Any redirect, Attorney Miller?
Ms. Bronte, could I ask you, with respect to the snow glare, would the glare off of the panels be increased at all by the snow or by the glare off of the snow? In other words, you're measuring the reflectivity off of the panels, but not off of the snow, correct?
Right.
whatever glare there would be off of the snow would be there regardless of the panels, correct?
Correct.
In fact, it could be reduced with the panels because the panels will be sitting on top of it and blocking some of that glare, correct?
Yes, if the snow slid off the panels, there would probably be less glare. Since snow is white, I would expect it to be a much higher reflectivity than the panels that are black.
Right, but that would be on the ground and that would be snow that would be there regardless of whether the panels were there.
Yes,
So your model doesn't take that into account because that's a natural occurrence, not caused by the installation of the panels.
correct.
There were questions regarding there were questions regarding the heat reflectivity of the panels with the distance from the panels to any other dwellings or even property lines or any other buildings on the site. Is there any possibility that that glare would increase the heat in those areas, given that it's green glare for a limited period of the day, in your opinion?
It would be unlikely.
Would it be highly unlikely?
I would think so.
There were questions regarding the percentage of sun reflected by the panels. When we talk about that percentage, does that have any relevance in your model? You're modeling green and yellow glare, correct?
Yes.
If the model showing if the model showing green glare or yellow glare, it doesn't matter what the percentage of sunlight reflected is. What matters is that it showed that impact on a viewer, correct?
Yes.
So for that reason, your analysis, in other words, is there in determining whether it's green or yellow glare, is that percentage relevant?
No.
There are also questions about the accuracy, and I understand you can't give percentages of accuracy of the model. And I guess first, if you can just, when you say the model has been truthed, what do you mean by that? Can you explain that?
The developer of the model has modeled the glare using the Forge Solar program and then tested it out at airports and military bases and comparing the actual results to what the model predicted, and has found that they're very similar.
And in terms of other options or alternatives, is this considered the most reliable and accurate program in the industry?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, now, we get to go back around. Does anybody have any questions based on what happened after you were given the last opportunity for questions? Sherry?
No.
Deb Gallipani? Don? Elise Van Anen? Any
No.
questions based on what you heard? Joshua Miller?
I got nothing.
Maria Miller?
No, thank you.
Eugene?
No.
Jay?
No.
Planning Commission?
I have a question. If there's complaints related to this project by, residents, as far as the glare, who answers them? Because I know they're gonna be brought up, and they're gonna be brought to council, to meetings. And these people are on here, have to answer those questions and those complaints.
So if if there were a condition placed on the application, and there could be a condition related to, additional glare analysis at land development, or, conditions regarding additional screening, if requested by Borough Council, that would be incorporated into zoning decision. Violations of that, if there were glare complaints or issues in the future, would be enforceable like other zoning violations. So the developer would remain responsible for those impacts, and it would be enforceable like other violations. If the project doesn't comply with other ordinance requirements, the same situation would result. It would be an enforcement just like any other property that exists. If they don't comply with the zoning ordinance, or they don't comply with their zoning approval, there's a right on behalf of the borough to enforce it. There's also a civil right for residents to enforce it.
So the resident will have to approach the project, the company, or does the council have to approach that, take care of that?
There's, and I don't wanna, step on your solicitor, but there's provisions in the municipality's planning code for, obviously the municipality has the right to enforce their zoning ordinance. There is a provision in the municipality's code for civil enforcement, of it as well, so either could be the case. We would hope, and, just to say this for Mr. Barry, and I'm sure that he agrees, we would hope that if there is any kind of complaint, that it would come first to the company so that the company could address it, and address it adequately, and, you know, that would hopefully be the process, and it would end there.
If I could add to that, John, the borough could enforce our zoning, okay? So if there were conditions put on it, it's almost like a binding contract, they would have to follow those conditions. Individuals can sue through nuisance if you're a neighbor. You could sue the company, you could also sue the property owner since it's their property and they allowed it to happen. So you have two avenues to go. The borough, through the government, can do it, enforce their zoning, and then you, as a private property owner, can also enforce your rights through nuisance.
And again, I believe the testimony was that this is a very minimal few minutes of glare in most of these properties per day when it's happening. And I believe the testimony was based on experience. That's not the kind of glare that has been found to cause any kind of nuisance or noxious or adverse impact on those buildings.
Andy, are we doing our closing argument now, or do you wanna wait till the end of testimony?
I'll reiterate that again.
Does Borough Council have any questions based on what you heard since last time you were given an opportunity to question?
I do. During Chris's, Attorney Farrell's questioning, he questioned you about the industrial building that was formerly a nursing home. It's a daycare now, it was a nursing home, and is a proposed drug and alcohol treatment facility center. But you had said that you left it out. Is that typical in a solar glare hazard analysis, to leave a building out?
Industrial buildings typically don't have a lot of windows, so yes, I typically don't use them. Industrial areas in generally have so much mess to look at that, and they're windowless, so this is not an industrial.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I don't usually include them unless I'm asked to. Now, knowing now that there's a lot of windows on this building, I would have included it if I had known that sooner.
So the report is incomplete. Excuse me. The report would be incomplete then.
I wouldn't call it incomplete, but there's modifications that could be done.
How quickly?
To just include that one building, I can do it in 10 or 15 minutes.
Is it too much to ask? We have other testimony.
I object.
We think,
They should have come prepared. They're not prepared.
Fair enough.
yeah, we can.
That was Jay Sporer, who is an intervener who objected.
So, we can provide additional analysis, one that we can also do screening in front of that building, if there are concerns with that building and the existence of that building at that location, and provide that to the Borough Council as part of this proceeding. I don't think we can do that this evening with the witnesses we have yet, but we can certainly look at that and complete that analysis with that.
Okay.
Could I ask one more question?
Sure.
You keep on talking about adding more screening. What about the people looking at view? You know, you have a house, you have a beautiful view, and you keep on talking about putting screening up. You know, you have a building there, and you say, well, we're gonna satisfy that building, we'll put screening up. It just doesn't work. You know, I mean, it might work for your glare part, but it doesn't work for the people that live there. If I keep on adding screening, I mean, how much, you know, you might as well box somebody in.
So what is your question, John?
I was just gonna say,
My question is.
that's your opinion, and.
Wait, you're not recognized. Ask a
My
question, please, John.
question is that you keep on, I don't know if I have a question, you put it that way.
Okay, so we'll
Okay.
move on from there.
All right.
Anything else on this witness? Attorney Miller, if you'd like to call your next witness.
I'd like to call Eddie Duncan.
And if you get to the point you can't sit in here, you gotta let us know. Okay. Because we're gonna have to conclude, because everybody's gotta be here to hear the testimony. You ready, Mr. Duncan?
Yes. Do you want to swear?
I will. Mr. Duncan, are you there?
I am, can you hear me?
Yes. Mr. Duncan, could you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, counsel.
Mr. Duncan, could you just restate and spell your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Eddie Duncan, E-D-D-I-E, and the last name Duncan, D-U-N-C-A-N.
And what is your occupation, Mr. Duncan?
I'm a noise control engineer.
And who are you employed by, or where do you work?
Paxwood Acoustics.
And what is your position there?
I am a principal consultant and founder of the company.
And what is your business address?
187 Hiram Atkins Byway, Queechee, Vermont.
What is your educational background?
I have a Bachelor of Science in Engineering Science from RPI, or Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, where I studied acoustics. And I have a Master of Science in Environmental Studies from Green Mountain College, where I studied environmental law and policy.
Do you have any professional licenses?
Yes, I am board certified through the Institute of Noise Control Engineering.
And can you just describe what that certification is?
Yeah, so their Institute of Noise Control Engineering is a nationwide organization that is the certifying body for noise control engineering. So it requires a specific amount of education in acoustics. It requires references from other board certified noise control engineers, and then it requires a fairly substantial examination process.
In your professional career, have you performed sound analyses for solar facilities?
I have, yes. I've done some noise analyses for over 80 solar panel projects.
And have you done other types of sound analysis?
I have, yes. I do quite a bit of work in the energy sector, so substations, energy storage systems, wind turbines. I also do work for other types of projects, the National Park Service, rock quarries, gravel pits, pretty much anything that can create sound that requires permitting. That's the space that we're in.
And approximately how long have you been certified by the INCE?
Since 2009.
And approximately how long have you been doing sound analysis studies?
22 years.
Have you ever been offered as an expert in any administrative proceedings or court proceedings?
I have, yes.
Were you offered as a sound expert in those or a noise analysis expert?
Yes.
And have you ever been rejected in any of those as an expert?
In no cases.
I'd like to offer Mr. Duncan as an expert in noise control engineering.
Okay. Sherry McDonough, you wish to question him?
No.
Elise Van Annen,
No.
Joshua Miller,
No.
Maria Miller,
Thank you.
Eugene Heppinger,
No.
Jay Spore.
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody on planning?
Yes.
John Matosky.
As these projects age, does the noise level increase?
John, you're gonna have an opportunity to ask that question right now. If you have any questions regarding his credentials as an expert. So we will get to those questions though, all right? Anybody on Borough Council have any questions on his expertise, wishes to voir dire? Okay, there are no objections to him being offered as an expert.
Mr. Duncan, are you familiar with the Belmont Turnpike Solar Project?
I am, yes.
Have you reviewed and are you familiar with the conditional use application that was submitted for this project?
I have reviewed it and I'm familiar with it, yes.
Have you reviewed the site plans that were included as Exhibit C to the application?
I have.
And have you also reviewed the proposed equipment specifications that were, I believe, Exhibit F to the application?
Yes.
Have you reviewed the any noise standards in the Waymart Borough zoning ordinance?
I have, yes.
And could you just briefly describe what those noise standards are and the relevance of them, I guess?
Yes, so the noise standard in the ordinance sets a sound pressure level limit at the property line. Specifically, it's called a day-night level sound level, either referred to as a DNL or an LDM, which is an average over the course of a 24-hour period and penalizes nighttime sound levels by 10 decibels. The limit that's applicable at the property line in the ordinance is 65 decibels. And that whole procedure and that background information is based on the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's 1979 noise assessment guidelines.
Is that a modern set of noise guidelines, or, in your opinion, is that set of noise guidelines, outdated?
It's still, it's of the same, vintage as the EPA guidelines that are still in effect. That being said, there are more modern guidelines from the World Health Organization, and so oftentimes I point to the World Health Organization guidelines rather than HUD or EPA.
And for this project, did you prepare Exhibit G, the solar sound analysis for this project? It was submitted.
Yes, I did.
And could you just briefly walk through the analysis that you prepared and the results of that report?
Yes, I can do that. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, please do it.
And can you just confirm that you're able to see the report here?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. So for this noise report, much like most other solar power projects, what we do is we start off by assessing what are the proposed sources, and by sources I mean sound sources, the equipment associated with the project that could create sound. And so from there, we then assess what are the applicable noise standards. In this case, it's the ordinance that we were just referring to. And then after that, we construct a three-dimensional computer model that projects what the sound levels would be, not just at the property line, although that's what we're most concerned with, since that is where the ordinance applies its limit, but also throughout the surrounding area, so we can see what the sound levels are like throughout the surrounding area. So that's the process that we went through in this noise assessment. And so if I scroll down to the second page, we come to figure 1, which is a map of the project in the surrounding area. And I'd be happy to describe that if that works for you, Attorney Miller.
Yes, please do. And also, if you can identify the locations of the equipment on this map.
Yes, I can do that. So I believe you've been looking at other site plans as well out there in the room, but on this map it should look very similar. We've got Belmont Turnpike on the left side or the west side of the screen. North is to the upward portion of figure 1, and we have a white dashed line that shows the property line in the area of the project, and a green line that extends from Belmont Turnpike in towards the project, which is the access drive or the site access. And at the end of that green line, we have a bunch of blue lines. Those are the solar panels. But kind of in between that green line and those blue lines, we have a lot of very small symbols there. So we've got a blue square that's shown here on the edge of the array. That is the project transformer. And then there are a series of yellow dots, and you can't really see how many there are here, but there are 24 string inverters that are shown here on the map that are they're so close together at this scale, they're overlapping one another. So those are all essentially right here at the end of the access drive on the edge of the array, going into the array a little bit for the string inverters. So that is kind of orienting us to this map here.
And the location of that equipment was provided to you by the applicant, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
And that was provided through a preliminary electrical plan for the project?
Yes, through SRA. We asked for the locations of the inverters and the transformer, and they provided those locations.
Okay. Thank you. If you want to continue with your presentation.
Sure. So, page 3 identifies the noise standard that we were just talking about a few minutes ago, just for reference. And we can see here that it says that the day-night average sound level shall not exceed 65 decibels at the property line. And then it references that U.S. Housing and Urban Development 1979 assessment guideline there as well. And then it goes on to explain how one would go about measuring that if they wanted to measure that afterwards. 65 decibels LDN, day-night level, and as I mentioned, that penalizes nighttime sound levels by 10 decibels in that calculation. So then we conduct sound propagation modeling, which is the next section that starts on page 3 and goes into page 4. The sound propagation modeling is conducted in accordance with an international standard. It's called ISO 9613-2. That's an international standard for calculating essentially outdoor sound propagation. So it dictates how sound attenuates as it moves away from a source. The model is a three-dimensional computer model, so it takes into account the terrain throughout the surrounding area and the height of the receptors, the height of the sources. And in that model, we included all 24 string inverters and one medium voltage transformer that were specified by the applicant. And from there, we then calculate, using the manufacturer sound emission data, we calculate what the sound emissions would be throughout the project area, including at the property line, which is where we need to evaluate the day-night level per the ordinance. We did add a 10 decibel penalty to all sources that operate at night. So to be clear, during the day, string inverters and a transformer would operate, and then at night, the string inverters do not operate, but the transformer, much like any transformer, remains energized all the time, and so the transformer can create some sound at night, albeit very low levels. So we applied a 10 decibel penalty to the sound levels that are being emitted by the transformer at night. And in the end, that model calculates what the sound pressure levels are throughout the project area at intervals of 10 feet. So every 10 feet we have a sound pressure level. And if we go down to page 5 on figure 2, we can see these lines, these concentric circles that kind of come out from where we showed those sources to be earlier. And those lines, those colored lines, represent the sound levels throughout the project area. And just for ease of reading, we point out that the highest property line sound level occurs on the southern property line, and it is 35 dBA LDN. And so just to reference, you can see the yellow line on this image. That yellow line itself represents 35 decibels. The limit, which is 65, isn't. Oh, Teams just glitched on me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The limit, which is 65 decibels, isn't even shown on this map because it happens so close to the sources itself. It doesn't occur away from the sources. So, and so then in conclusion, for the assessment, the ordinance sets a limit of 65 dBA LDN at the property line, and the highest projected sound level at the property line is 35 dBA.
So, and in your analysis, Mr. Duncan, can you describe what kind of atmospheric conditions you're assuming?
Yes, so we're assuming the most conservative assumptions for atmospheric attenuation. And we're also assuming that all the receptors are downwind from the sources. So essentially the wind at the site is being generated at the sources themselves. So everybody is downwind, which is not really a possibility. But that's the most conservative way to analyze what the projected sound levels would be throughout the surrounding area.
And is your model taking into account any screening or vegetation or obstructions?
It's not, only to the extent that terrain could provide some attenuation if there was some large intervening terrain. I don't think that's the case here, but if that was the case, that terrain would provide some screening. But there's no barriers, there's no berms or forest put into the model.
So it is, I think what you just said though is it does consider the topography in the analysis.
It does, yes.
What are these, in your opinion, are these the primary sources of sound from the facility?
Yeah, these are really the only sources of sound from the facility. It's a fixed tilt panel system, so there are no tracking motors on the panels. And so it's the inverters and the transformers that may create sound.
And in your analysis, what level of operational function are you considering for the equipment to arrive at these results?
Yeah, we're assuming that the equipment is operating at full capacity. That's what the manufacturers base their sound emission data on. So it's assuming that the inverters are running at full capacity along with the transformer.
And would that be a typical scenario 24 hours a day?
No, that would be a scenario that would occur on a full sunny day, while the sun is at full sun. So other than that, the inverters would be operating typically something less than that.
At nighttime, would you expect it would be considerably less?
Yes, at nighttime it's just sound emitted by the transformer, and at the property line that would be less than 20 decibels.
And you've talked a lot about the decibel scale. Could you describe that scale in terms of, how is 35 decibels, which you're finding at the property line, relative to, or what is the relevancy to then 65 decibels, which is the sound limit in the ordinance?
That's a great question. So in terms of perception for sound pressure levels, for every 10 decibel increase or decrease in sound level, it's a perceived doubling or halving of loudness depending on which direction you go. So 35 decibels is 30 decibels less than 65 decibels. So that would be actually considered 8 times quieter in terms of perception than what the ordinance allows at the property line.
And could you just explain the sound propagation modeling software that you use and whether that's an acceptable software in the industry?
Yes, so we use CADNA-A. That's kind of detailed in the report here, but the important part is that CADNA-A is implementing an international standard, which is ISO 9613-2. That's essentially dictating how the calculations are conducted, and that standard is implemented in CADNA-A and a few other software packages as well.
And you have used this for other solar projects in the past?
Yes, we use this for other solar projects in the past. We use this really across the country, across a wide range of jurisdictions, including throughout Pennsylvania on solar or other types of projects.
And you have done a sound analysis on other solar projects in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yes.
Do you know approximately how many you may have done?
In Pennsylvania, somewhere between 15 and 25.
In your professional opinion, based on your review of the ordinance, your review of the site plans, the application, and the model you produced, the analysis you did, would it be your professional opinion that this project will be within the sound parameters as contained in the zoning ordinance for Waymark Borough?
Yes.
And can you offer that to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes, I can.
And in your opinion, the 35 decibel level at the property line, would that have any kind of adverse impact on any adjacent properties?
No, it would not.
That's all I have for director.
Okay. Cheryl McDonough, any cross-examination questions?
No questions.
Elise Von Allen, any?
No.
Joshua Miller? Maria Miller?
No.
Eugene Hutchinson?
Yes.
Go ahead, Eugene. Nice and loud for us,
Do
please.
you have a recording to duplicate the noise that this is gonna emit?
No, I don't have a recording, to provide on this, specific inverter.
Any other questions, Eugene?
That's all.
Jay Spore,
No.
Planning Commission.
Yes. As these, systems get older, do they get louder?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
As the system gets older, does it get louder?
So, no, not, in my experience, I haven't experienced any systems get louder over time. If there is a change in sound level, and I'm speaking from other equipment, actually, substations that I've been involved with, it's usually an indication that something in the equipment needs to be repaired or fixed because it has become inefficient or something is broken. So that would be something that SRE would, I don't want to speak for them, but if I were the developer, I would want to fix because it usually means something's not operating correctly.
That's it.
Wayne? Any Borough Council members have any questions?
No questions, but I'm asking for a conclusion. I cannot physically sit here anymore.
Okay, anybody?
I'm
else?
exhausted.
Anybody, any other interveners or Borough Council members having any issues that they would like to stop and reconvene to a second hearing? Jane?
It's okay to cave, Jane.
We can't, if one can't continue.
caving in. Hold on a second. I've been up since 3. I have to get up at 3.
Okay, well, we gotta finish.
My eyes are very heavy.
Let's finish this witness, okay? I just have a few questions. You know, there's a road that separates, Silvercrest Drive across the street from the barn. Do you have any idea, and maybe you don't, it might be an unfair question, but how many decibels would a car going 45 miles per hour, how many decibels would that be?
Yeah, so, I don't know specifically for a car at 45, I mean, those houses are spread out over a distance from Belmont Turnpike. I do know that there's a national traffic noise map that's put out by the federal government, and that national traffic noise map shows that sound levels along the Belmont Turnpike are between 55 and 60 decibels, and that's a 24-hour average that's not penalizing nighttime sound levels. So that would be, as you back away from the road, that's going to attenuate down to, I would estimate around 45 decibels or so at some of those residences that are further from the road. And just for context, this project is less than 25 at those residences.
I thought it was 35 at the property line.
65.
It is 35 at the property line. I'm talking about the residences across the street. That property line is the southern property line close to the equipment.
Okay.
If we're talking about Belmont Turnpike, the sound level at Belmont Turnpike from the project only is 25 decibels.
Okay. And you're saying a car going by is 45 decibels?
Yeah, at the residences on the street that you referenced, a car going by on Belmont Turnpike would be on the order of 45 decibels in the middle of that street. If you go closer to the turnpike, it's going to be louder, and if you go to the far back of that road, it's going to be a little quieter.
Okay. What is making the noise from the project?
It's the transformer and the inverter. The transformer, there is electrical noise based off of the electricity that's moving through the transformer. And the inverter, the primary source of sound are small fans that keep the inverter cool, but there is also some electrical noise for that AC to DC to AC conversion.
And there are 25 inverters, is that correct? On this project?
I have 24 in the model. That was my understanding of how many are there.
Okay.
If we were to add one more, the sound levels wouldn't change.
24 is fine. Are all of these inverters, I think you said it's all those yellow dots close together, so close that you can't really delineate them out, right?
That's correct, yes.
These 24 inverters, what type of an area are they in? 10 feet by 10 feet, 20 feet by 20 feet?
I can look that up real quick if that is okay with you guys.
Sure. Unless Mr. Berry or you have an answer to that.
I don't have the answer to that. That would be in the electrical plan they was given.
I think Mr. Berry, you said they were all spread out, didn't you?
Yeah, they are. I mean, what you have is the collection of them, as you're looking at it, that's where you're saying, there's just yellow lines through it.
So there's 24 of them.
Or 24.
Would the 24 of them fit into this room, or is it spread out more than that?
Oh, it's spread out more than that.
Okay.
So I just briefly looked at, in the model, we've got 2 rows that are excuse me, 2 rows of 12 each that span about 66 feet.
2 rows, okay. Is it possible to do anything to mitigate the sound down to 0 decibels at the property line?
I haven't looked at that.
From your expertise, is that possible?
I have never tried to mitigate inverters down to 0 decibels at the property line. I would assume that it's possible. I would point out that background sound levels are already probably higher than what we're modeling here. So, and even if we were to go out with a sound level meter, we couldn't measure 0 decibels. The electronic noise from a class 1 sound level meter, we can only measure down to 17 decibels. So, most people can't hear that quietly. Your hearing isn't that good.
Isn't it true that 0 decibels is the amount that people can't hear, but they can hear 1 decibel?
If you have perfect hearing and you are in an anechoic chamber with no background sound levels, then you could hear 1 decibel. You would not be able to experience 1 decibel in an open outdoor environment.
What is the lowest amount you could experience in an open outdoor environment?
In an open outdoor environment, the lowest would probably be like 17 to 22. That's the lowest that we're able to go out and measure in an open outdoor environment.
Now that number
you just
was...
have too many other sources that create background sound levels, even when there's no traffic and no insects going by.
Okay, so you're saying that number 17 would be the same whether you live in town or whether you live out in the country?
Well, you wouldn't get 17 in town. It just wouldn't happen. There'd be other noise sources. So if you went out into the middle of nowhere in a snowy, full snow field in the middle of the night and no wind and no insects, then you might get 17 decibels.
How many decibels does the transformer produce?
Okay, so the transformer at night at the worst case property line location is 15 decibels.
How about during the day?
During the day, it would also be 15 decibels. Most of the sound comes from the inverters.
Does the transformer make sound 24 hours a day or just when the sun is up?
No, the transformer makes sound 24 hours a day.
Okay, what about the inverters? First question,
The inverters
how
would make
many
sound,
decibels? first question is, how many decibels would the 24 of them produce?
If the set modeled sound level at the property line is 35 and the transformer is 15, then the inverters themselves are producing that 35.
35?
Yes.
And I don't know what a combiner box is, but somebody mentioned a combiner box. Did you test that?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Somebody mentioned, testified about a combiner box earlier, that there's one or two of them on the project. Did you test those?
No, the combiner box doesn't create sound. It's the inverters and the transformer that create sound.
Okay. That's all I have. Based on my questions, going back to Sherry, do you have any redirect?
I would just ask you again, Mr. Duncan, what is the ordinance, sound limit, that, is set forth for, this municipality?
It's a day-night sound level of 65 decibels at the property line.
And this project will be considerably below that at the property line, correct?
At its highest, it would be 35 decibels at the property line.
Thank you.
With those questions, back to Sherry.
No questions.
Lise?
No.
Joshua?
I have a question for you, if I can ask.
Yes, not really, but,
Well, I'm just asking, can you hear my wife's goats in Linda's barn?
I'm not gonna answer that.
Then you probably
It's not, listen, it's not time for statements, okay?
That was a
Do you have any questions for that gentleman, the expert witness, yes or no?
No.
Maria Miller, do you have any questions for the witness?
I do have one question. Could you provide an example of something that falls within the range of like 30, 40 decibels that's rather common that we could all relate to?
Yes, so a soft whisper at a distance of 6 feet would be about 35 decibels.
Thank
So
you.
if you were standing 6 feet away from someone and whispering something to them, that would be about 35 decibels.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, planning board, any questions? Borough council? Any questions? I have a follow-up. So you're telling me this noise is gonna have the effect of somebody whispering to you 24 hours a day?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Any follow-up? Attorney Mill, any follow-up?
Mr. Duncan, can you, approximate in response to that question? I mean, this is at the property line, what impact would you expect that to have, someone standing at the property line?
I mean, no impact. It's, you know, if you're standing at the property line, you're likely to be listening to Belmont Turnpike. The 35 decibels from this project, you'd be able to have a conversation, you'd be able to, provided all the other conditions are fine, you'd be able to take a nap. It's 35 decibels is quiet. It's what you experience, actually, in most cases, your sound level, background sound levels in your house are about that.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions on that? Teresa, you had a request. What was your request?
To conclude, please.
Okay. How many more witnesses do you have?
I have 2 more, and then
That's,
Mrs. Drake.
that's 3 witnesses. The time was 20 after 10. We can't proceed without everybody here that's basically on the jury, which is Borough Council and with our Planning Commission. Can you make it, or would you like to conclude?
Conclude. I can't. I'm losing focus and I'm falling asleep.
Okay, so I think it's reasonable that we're gonna have to end here. We'll try to accommodate you as best we can. But I think we're gonna have to come back for a second hearing, as the time is 20 after
can you provide us with a few dates for that
Absolutely.
hearing?
You and I wanna talk tomorrow, we'll put it together. Andy, we'll get you back in as soon as we can. Is that okay? When's our next meeting?
Tenth.
Will the interveners be notified by email when that date is?
Everybody will be notified. We have to get the advertising out for it, so
Yes, if we don't set
We
the
could do
hearing
it that
date tonight, we'll have to do that.
you and I can talk tomorrow, and
Yes.
we'll get a date. Is that okay? I know it's not what you
Well,
want, but.
we announced it at the last conditional use hearing, we announced it live, and that was sufficient, we didn't have to advertise it. But we'd have to pick a date.
Check, everybody's gonna have to check this.
Yep.
How about we talk tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll conclude, we're going off the record. And maybe you could have the glare person have that other.